Okay, hi guys, thanks for coming. So, social engineering talk, the conference isn't completely about social engineering. This one's going to be slightly different. We're going to talk about hacking the mind and really how we perceive things, really also how suggestible people are. So first of all, just to cover myself so I don't get fired, all this stuff is based on my own research, my own opinions, nothing to do with the company I work for. So really what we're going to understand is how powerful language is. Just by reading this now and listening to what I'm saying, you're allowing me to control a small part of your mind. So who am I? You can call me Dale, or after to most other things. You may have heard my lovely voice before, my lovely accent on the Eurocrash Security podcast. If not, you're probably not Chris's mum. So if you search me, you will find out most of these things about me. So today, I want to take you guys all on a journey. And this is the journey that I've been going over for maybe just over the last 2 years. And we're going to talk about different types of social engineering and how you become the master manipulator. What I found from this journey and what good it's going to be to you. Really what this means to you, what you can do, code injection, how you can manipulate someone. Talk a bit about when does this stuff work. So I ask you all to try and keep an open mind, and you're probably going to be hearing some of this and thinking, bullshit, that's crap. And I encourage you to think that. What I encourage you is just to listen, keep an open mind, and maybe research these things more in your own time, and really try it out. And of course, talk about the ethics of some of this stuff. Some of it's a bit controversial, and what you can do to hopefully protect yourself from some of these manipulation techniques, and then what you can do moving forward. So, kicking it off, types of social engineering. So in my job, I do social engineering and I also hire social engineers, and it's like most of you, some of these guys really aren't very good. So just so we're all on the same page, this is the Wikipedia definition of what social engineering is, and it talks about basically you're a liar. And I discussed this at Groupon with Chris earlier on this year. And lots of the social engineers we meet, yes, they are liars. But are the good ones really lying, or is it really reality what they're putting across? And some of the stories we hear about how they break into buildings, steal stuff, and how they got Jedi powers. No, I'm not the person you're looking for. So we're going to explore that a little bit. So I think there's basically 5 types of social engineering. The first one, the opportunist, the sexy chick. Sex sells, we all know that. So she asks you to do something, you're probably going to do it. But basically, this opportunist social engineer, they're probably quite an attractive man or woman. They've not really done this sort of stuff before, so they're not trained, it's a first timer. And basically, if you challenge this type of person, they're just going to run away. Second type, a naturally confident guy or girl. You met the type of person, they talk the talk, but they don't really know what they're on about. They can sell ice to Eskimos, so they're probably quite good at sales, but they're not an expert in this, they're just playing a game and just fingers crossed the way through. Then we get to what I say is probably the more common social engineer, the professional, so they probably work at a reasonable level in InfoSec. They've got a structured process of how they're going to go in, what their precept is, who they're pretending to be, and they've got some knowledge, but the main thing here is now they're starting not to live the lie, it is more of a reality, but still it's an art. They don't really know why things work, they just know, oh, I normally say this and this happens, or I do this and that happens, but they don't really know why. So then we get to the seasoned pro, the ninja or pirate, whatever it's about. But basically this kind of guy, he's got a repeatable process, he does this every day, he knows when he says a certain thing or he shows a certain badge, wears a certain t-shirt, things happen. He's got experience. And when someone challenges him, he doesn't wet his pants and run away. He's got an idea of how he's going to handle that confrontation, and he's passionate. But one of the problems with this type of social engineer, which is probably most common with social engineers we meet, that are these elitist guys that know everything, there's nothing else to learn. They are the master social engineer as far as they're concerned. So, talking about these other 4 types, it got me thinking, what does it take to be the best type of social engineer? How can you kind of increase your chances of always getting the information you want? How always bypassing controls? So okay, this idea of this master manipulator. What's different about this guy is he really understands how and why things happen. So when he asks for information a certain way and he gets it, he knows why it's happening, what the process is happening in the mind. The guy's got a game plan. So it's not just, oh, I'll try this and I hope this will happen. And if it doesn't work, shit, I run away. They're a bit like a magician, hence the magic part is that when you perform a magic trick, the spectator sees A, B, and C. But really the magician has A, A1, A2, B, B3, has multiple processes, multiple outs to get to their end result. And the master manipulator has that ability. And they're creative. They do things that are a bit far out. This is why we're going to talk about some of these things like hypnosis, neurolinguistic programming, and really how this stuff can happen. But one of the negative sides of a master manipulator, they're a bit cocky, so they get a bit carried away. They know there's a process, but sometimes they even skip their own processes. So, how do we become the master manipulator? Any of you guys familiar with Darren Brown? Yeah? Okay. So, he's a cool guy, and he's why I consider one of the master manipulators. He's honest about his dishonesty, and he uses all different things for illusion to manipulate people. So like any good hacker, we need a good tool. So the best tool is our own mind. We all know how powerful and how much processing power our brain has, but like most things, it's vulnerable. So the key thing to understand here as we go through this talk is I explain to you just at a high level how your brain's working when they're trying to manipulate you. So you've got your limbic system, and this is what they call the old part of the brain. So this controls your fight or flight mechanisms. You're probably all aware of this, whether you're going to run away or put up a fight. Then we've got the subconscious, and this is really the powerhouse of your mind. So every second, even now, your brain is taking in 11 million pieces of information a second. So that's a lot of information. But the really interesting thing is only 16 to 40 pieces of that information form your reality. So all this other stuff is all in the back there somewhere to be called upon. Your reality is based on these 16 to 40 pieces of information your subconscious mind has prioritised as being important. So that's one of the really things to hang on to when we go for this talk. Then we have our own firewall. We all love firewalls because they make us safe. But like firewalls in tech, it doesn't quite do what it says on the tin. So we've got this thing called the critical factor. And what this does is, this is what controls and prioritises the information from our subconscious to our conscious mind. And the idea is it stops us getting screwed over. So when someone's trying to manipulate us, we've got these red flags and barriers coming up saying, no, 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 no. But then we look at some of these techniques as to how we can bypass that critical factor. One of the things that really helps us when we're trying to bypass people is because we've got so much information coming into our mind, as powerful as it is, we just can't process it. So our mind makes stuff up. It fills in the gaps so that we can respond so quickly. So through our culture and how we're brought up, and through experiences that we have in our lives, we think that, if someone throws a ball to me, and they throw it back, and then I throw a ball again, and they throw it back, and then I pretend to throw the ball, your body has the same reactions that you're expecting, so the gap is filling in. And another thing is, mind's negatives are really positives. We can't process a negative is the way we think about it. So if I say to you, I don't want you to think of a chocolate keyboard. No pink elephant as you were expecting them. So what happens in your brain, you think of a chocolate keyboard, because the don't think, because the think command was there. And then you think, oh yeah, shit, I don't think about chocolate keyboards. And this is the same thing, so just by suggesting to someone, okay, I don't want you to think about me coming in the building, I don't want you to think of this, because the command think is in there, your brain has to go through those processes. So, when I was trying to work out how to be this master manipulator and what the skills are, I looked at people in marketing and sales, some of the techniques that they use. And so one of the things that was really banded around all in the 90s is this thing called neurolinguistic programming. Anyone had experience with NLP? Okay. So I started to look into NLP, and if you're not familiar with it, it's been around since the 70s. This guy, Richard Bandler, there was a student and there was a lecturer of linguistics, John Grinder. And basically what they did, they started to study therapists. So So not trying to get the education they have, but just listening to the words they're saying, the sentence structures, and the results it was having on their patients. And then they literally just went out and tried these same words with people they could invite to groups, and just seeing if they could change people's thought processes just by using language, no proper studies. And lots of people, this is where I guess I piss people off a little bit, but people say this is a science, and they try and sell it as this science of excellence, and by changing your process you can become a millionaire. I don't really think it's a science, it's more an art and a process that's experienced. So one of the key things when it comes to neurolinguistic programming is they found really how important rapport is. And as you can see with the two monkeys, we like people that like us, and we like people that like us. So just by building rapport and what they call mirroring, so you'll find even when you're in a meeting, once you start to get on with someone, you're sitting in the same way. Someone reaches for a drink, you're having a drink at the same time. This rapport is really essential for starting to kind of bypass this critical factor a little bit, because if you like the same football team as I do, you have this little camaraderie thing. So if I like horses, even if you don't, you probably like horses, because there's this whole rapport thing going on. One of the key things they kind of came up with was this whole concept of framing and reframing. So basically, the way I look at it is everyone is playing their own game. So you've all got your own objective in life. You get up in the morning, you're going to have breakfast, you're going to jump in the car. And so to manipulate people and make change in this therapeutic setting, what they do is reframing. So start to use key words, key sentences to change the game you're playing into the game that we're looking for. And these can be just as simple things as if you're standing with your legs apart, if I just ask you to stand with your legs together, I've started to change your game into what I want to do. I've started to manipulate you. And just those small changes can really make a big impact. One of the things that they found is getting feedback is really important. So asking people what they're experiencing, what emotions they're having, what thought processes they are, and then they can utilise the mind's own thought processes. So a simple example of this, I did some work with someone a couple of months ago who wanted to be more confident when talking to groups. And so I would think just as simple as just trying to tell them that they'll be more confident would help. But in their mind, being more confident was going to be like a tree. Being rooted and confident, everything just flying past. So it just shows that if we don't have feedback, we make assumptions. If we try and manipulate people based on how we think that the game is playing, we're not going to be as successful. So I studied NLP and read about it, and went on a few courses, but I started to run into some problems and get disappointed. Because these guys, even though I think NLP to some people is quite a far out process, I was talking about how we could possibly use this for social engineering, and some of these guys, it's like there is a Bible according to Bandler. If you are breaking these 10 commandments, then you're evil, we don't want to speak to you. And so I was coming up with things, I've tried this out, and it's worked in a certain way, and I tried something else and it didn't work, and they were like, oh, you must be doing it wrong. There was no process for discussion. So I kind of found these guys then just become hypocrites to some extent and didn't want to challenge themselves, to challenge their ways of thinking. But in one of the last meetings I was at, I met this guy and I was talking about social engineering, and he thought that was really cool. And he said, wouldn't it be amazing if you could just walk up to someone, click your fingers and say, give me your password. And they would give you your password. And I was like, yeah, right, okay. And he's like, no, seriously, I've been studying hypnosis. This is really cool. Imagine if you could use hypnosis to click your fingers and have someone say your password. And I was like, yeah, but I've seen hypnosis on the telly, it's just crap. You can't make someone go to sleep and all these simple things. But the same as NLP, when I first heard about NLP, I thought that was rubbish. And through the study, I realised it has got benefits. There are processes, and just that sense of a positive mental attitude can make a big difference. So I thought, okay, let's look into hypnosis. So, anyone experienced hypnosis? Okay. Every single one of you has experienced hypnosis. Guaranteed. So, hypnosis to lots of people, because we see it on the TV, is this eyes closed and you're asleep and you're out of control of your body. But if ever you've been sat in a room and you find yourself daydreaming and all of a sudden, oh, I just got off for a minute there, that is what hypnosis is. if when you're driving to work you leave your house and all of a sudden you're in the meeting room and you think, shit, how did I get here? That is what hypnosis is. It's just your subconscious mind is doing its own thing and just not passing this information across to your conscious mind because it's not important. It keeps you driving, it stops you crashing. So basically, hypnosis has been around since mankind existed. This is how our brain works. But really, it wasn't until the early 1840s that people started to give a name for it. I guess as the Western world started to look into how, I guess, some of the ancient people were using some of these suggestions. And there's a guy called James Baird, who was a surgeon in Scotland, that came up with this neurohypnotism, nervous sleep. Which I guess is also why people think it is this sense of sleeping. When you're hypnotising someone, you do say sleep, going deeper and deeper, but no one's going anywhere, no one's sleeping, you're just exactly where you were. What it really is just a focused state of attention, is that you're prioritising all this information into your subconscious mind to focus on how your reality is going to be. One of the amazing things about hypnosis and why it can be good for any sort of manipulation is really talk about things in a vague way. So when we're saying that your arm is going to levitate, we don't necessarily say, oh, your arm is going to levitate right now. Maybe now, or maybe in a moment, your arm will start to rise on a cushion of air. It's an ambiguous term. We're not saying it's definitely going to happen, but we're not saying it's not going to happen. We just let the mind make its own mind up. As we said earlier, the mind likes to fill in gaps. So if we can deliver content in a certain way, our mind will fill in the gaps that give the reality or the suggestion that we're looking for. So I start to read all these hypnosis books, and I'm still thinking, shit. So I started to do a bit more research, and I found out about this guy called Dave Allman, and he wrote one of the first sort of books on hypnosis. He was actually a radio presenter, but what he was really known for in the hypnosis world was he wrote this medical book of hypnosis. And one of the things that I first read that really amazed me was there was apparently a guy who had a heart transplant just under hypnosis because he was allergic to anaesthetics. So using hypnosis, they were able to do this heart transplant. And that sounds a bit wacky and far out, and I completely agree. And there are certain people say that because you really can't sense stuff, feel things, you've got your nerves inside your body, that once your skin's cut open, that's really the most painful part. So it's not really that far out. If you know anything about hypnosis, you will have heard this guy called Milton Erickson. And I guess he is one of the, some say controversial, but he's one of the most well-known hypnotists. People talk about when they went to see him in therapy, he would just literally tell you a story, and you would come out changed, and he would suggest you in the story process. Milton Erickson is one of the guys that the NLP guys studied as part of their process of coming up with NLP. So it's not surprising that when we look at NLP, there are a lot of hypnotic suggestions and hypnotic processes in there. And really this is what it comes down to. This is all just language. It's not some special magic trick. So I'm reading Milton Erickson's stuff, and I'm trying to hypnotise people. It's not working. I try to pick my fingers and go to sleep, and people are like, no. And I'm thinking, see, I'm right. And I told this guy, this is just shit. This doesn't work. But I'm thinking, okay, let me just see if there's anyone closer to home for me that I can do some of this stuff on. So I started to look into hypnotists in the UK, and I came across this guy called Anthony Jacquin. He's based probably 50 miles from where I live, and just at the time, it was about probably 18 months ago, around that time, he released this book called Reality is Plastic. And I thought this book was self-published. I think it was like £20, £25, so really cheap. And even though I'd completely given up on the process, I thought, right, I'll buy this book. Basically, his process is all about not hypnosis that we hear about from hypnotherapy, where you come and lay on a couch for an hour and I talk softly to you and you close your eyes and you dream away. He was really about the hypnosis where literally seconds to minutes someone is in a very suggestible state. And I thought, this is what I'm looking for. So I bought his book, and you're reading it, and it just sounds too simple. How can you just talk to someone and say, and as you concentrate on the words I'm saying, and you hear all these noises, and when your phone rings, yes, the more your phone rings, the more you go into hypnosis. So I read the book. I build up the courage to ask strange people if I can touch them. And guess what? Still doesn't work. I'm like, damn! Because this guy was quite close to me and he self-published the book, when he sent me the book, he said, if you've got any questions, email me. So I sent him an email and said, I'm trying to do this hypnosis stuff, but it doesn't work, I just look an idiot. So I'm trying to put people to sleep and they're just laughing in my face. But I'm doing everything it says in your book. And he says something that's really important. If you're looking to do hypnosis or social engineering or whatever you're trying to do, if you're trying to be the water cooler guy, you need to be the water cooler guy. So when you're trying to hypnotize someone, you need to be the hypnotist. And he's right, and it's as simple as this. All my process was exactly right. When I'm saying to someone, okay, in the moment you're not meant to lift your hand off the table, your hand is stuck. I'm thinking, don't think it is. And I'm thinking, don't think it is, and then, no, it isn't. And it's just that simple thing as we know before about the body language, we really project how we're experiencing what we're feeling. So if we don't think we're supposed to be past the security barrier, we're going to give off those signals. We don't belong, we shouldn't be there. When you're trying to hypnotize someone, you know, if you don't think that hand is going to stick, if you're not 100% committed to that happening, it's not going to happen. And you're not going to deliver things in a suggestible way. So, short story is, I do some more work again. Guess what? People are closing their eyes, going into hypnosis. And I'm like, wow, I'm still not 100% convinced. So then I met up with him on a course with some other hypnotists. And basically, we're doing simple things that I think people could be playing along. And then I saw some things that I won't discuss because it's on video, but you're kind of like, there's no way someone will be doing that for real. That's sniffing, an area they should be sniffing, and something strange is happening there. So I started to experiment a bit more with this, and I thought, well, hypnosis is great, it's really good for entertaining, but I can't use this for social engineering. I can't walk up to someone and say, okay, just look at me a minute, I want you to imagine you're falling asleep, and people are going to think I'm crazy, or even crazier than they probably think I am already. So then I heard about this guy called David Kaloff, and I downloaded his audio series, and he, with none of this going to sleep and close your eyes and look at what I'm doing, he basically had this instruction to hold a piece of paper, look at this piece of paper, and try and drop that piece of paper, and you won't be able to drop it. And I'm listening at home with headphones, and I'm like, okay, I can't drop a piece of paper. How does this work? And then, so as I was researching through him, and I met with this guy, Anthony Jackman again, and this other guy called James Tripp, and he had something that I just thought, wow, this is amazing, this is just what I need. And he's got this process called hypnosis without trance. And basically, it's literally that. So, if you stick someone's hand to the table, and they can still move their other hand, they can still look around, you say to them, you hypnotized? No. You can't move your hand. No. So this sort of really started getting me thinking, is hypnosis what people think? Is hypnosis some magic thing? Or are we always in hypnosis? Or is hypnosis not really anything? So this got me thinking about, how does it work? And why the reasons it work? Now, the reason this stuff works is because our culture and the way our brains work, things happen for a reason. So if you hold your hand under a lighter, your hand gets burned. And your brain says, ah, that fucking hurt, because there was a lighter underneath it. And this is how we learn, you don't touch the hot fire because then my hand gets burned. So with hypnosis, just language in general, we pace what's really happening. We have this thing called a yes set. So just as simple as saying to someone, you're stood here next to me, yes. And we're talking, yes. You can hear the cars going by, yes. And you can't remember your name, yes. And that's just, as obvious as it sounds and stupid as it sounds, that's how it works. It's we're bypassing the critical factor. We go into this state of mindlessness. So this critical factor is checking this checklist. Here's what this person is saying is fact. Here's what I'm experiencing is fact. Yes, yes, yes. And after a bit, it just kind of gets bored. It turns off. And then the suggestions we make after that, once this critical factor has sort of opened the gates to the mind, any suggestions we have out of this 11 million pieces of information a second can become prioritized. So these 16 to 40 pieces of information that come across is, yes, the hand is stuck. Yes, I can't remember my name. And this is the amazing thing. You just think, how can the brain just be so vulnerable? And so what can we do with hypnosis, we're trying to use it in any of these states, noticing all these different types of phenomena. So you can give someone amnesia. Would it be interesting that if someone were to catch you on a social engineering engagement, you make them forget? Or you can make them forget their name, or they can hallucinate things. You can make someone see something that isn't there. Catalepsy, that's when you make someone rigid. Not in that way, unless you're a chick maybe, but... So would it be quite cool if you could stick a security guard to that point, so you couldn't follow you? And one of my favourite ones is this thing about post-hypnotic suggestion. So it's this process, in my mind, of creating your own zombie botnet of humans. So you can hypnotise someone, have them forget something or imagine something, and you can anchor that state. This is also in NLP, a touch or a word or a signal of some sort, and have them return exactly back to that state. And that state could be weeks ago. So I haven't tried this myself because I haven't got the balls for that bit, but you can hypnotise someone and, for example, have them believe that when they look at you, they believe you are the CEO of the company. What you could do then is anchor that and say to them, next time we meet and you shake my hand, you will think I'm the CEO, but you have no memory of this. And in the weeks to come, you can trail up, shake their hand, and in theory, if everything worked right and the situation was correct, they would actually see you in their mind to some extent how they visualise that as the CEO, and should just let you straight in. So, research is important. So I'd like to have you try some research with you guys quickly now, because you've all got different backgrounds, different language, so I'll see if some of this stuff works or not. So, you all need a few things: eyes, I know you've got them, and ears. So I want you to look at the screen and listen to the words I'm saying. You also need something else: an index finger. You all got an index finger? Yep. Just if you're not sure. Is that one? Sounds crazy, the amount of people that don't know what their index finger is. Okay. So here we have the word mind. The letters M, I, N, and E. And if I was to ask you to look at each of those four letters, extend your index finger and select any of those four letters. You need to do that now. Now you've chosen a letter. So put your hands up if you are thinking of M. I love it. Okay. I. Okay. M. Okay. And D. Okay. So, it was my intention to influence you to choose N. So a little bit later, I'll get you guys, maybe in the back of your mind, think about maybe what I said or what you've seen, and then I will explain to you just simply how that works. Just a simple example of how you can prioritise that information, so when you think you're freely selecting a letter, really it's based on something I've said. So, we've been doing this journey, we discovered these things, but what have I found? So the main thing I found is big because. Everything happens for a reason. So when you're trying to sell yourself to someone and get them to believe something, there needs to be a reason behind it. You need to have this good pretext or a valid reason that they are going to believe in. And giving a reason really just shows someone you have respect for them at a subconscious level. So a good example of this is if there was a long queue for the photocopier and you just pushed into the front to make a photocopy, people are like, what's up to the back of the queue? But if something just as simple as saying, oh no, I need to make a copy, people are like, oh, okay. They're still not 100% sure what's happening. That's showing a sign of respect, and the because just creates that little moment of sort of a memory fart. You just get a bit confused and just kind of let someone go about their way, and later on you're thinking, why did I let them make a copy? It doesn't make any sense. So, a few things when you're trying to suggest someone that can get things working in your favour. The first one, like I said before, is getting agreement. If you can build up this yes set and get people agreeing with you, when you start to suggest things that really aren't true, why have they got any reason to doubt you? You build up trust. And like I said, their critical factor is starting to be broken down. So if everything else you've said is true and they've been able to verify it, even if it's, like I said, just the simplest thing that they're hearing what you're saying, once they realise that it's true, you can start bypassing them and getting the agreement you're looking for. Something as simple as speaking into the right ear as opposed to the left ear apparently can increase your chances, I think it's like 20% or something. Because when you speak into the right ear, it's the left ear, left part of your brain that processes information. And that side of your brain isn't so analytical and logical, just sort of let things bypass. So it might be nothing, but no harm in trying. Another thing is a guy called Robert Cialdini. He does loads of research on persuasion and things. One of the things he's found is that if we ask someone a question, if I say to you, oh, you could really help me trying to solve this problem, wouldn't you? And you say yes. Then you're going to stay true. There's like this thing that I must do what I said I was going to do. So if I'm asking you to help me get into the building, so I really need to change a switch and the whole world's going to fall apart and I'm going to get my ass kicked, you're kind of like, oh shit, well, I said I'd help him, so maybe I should. The other thing is just going there first. This is the thing I talked about, is what you're thinking is expressed more than just the language, say the body language and the expressions you're giving off. So if you want to see yourself, the other side of the barrier, really envisage that, make it your reality. So you're not lying. As far as you're mentally concerned, you belong over there, and everything you project is exactly the same. Another thing is sharing someone's perspective. So that everyone's different, everyone's playing their own game. So when you're trying to suggest someone to do something, or experience or see something, try and share their perspective. So stand how they're standing. Think of the mindset that they're thinking about. And don't just think that you're going to get in, know that you're going to get in. Just make that your reality. So really what I'm getting at is all these things, all this language, whether you're trying to manipulate someone, or you're just trying to do a magic trick or hypnotize someone, really, all these names for this stuff, in my opinion now, it's just a bit of crap really. All this stuff is just language and suggestion. If we know how to deliver things in a certain way, use certain words, get people to imagine things, get people to pretend they're experiencing something and go there and give that the cost, then we can really kind of make these things happen.
Now look at your hand and notice the change in focus in your eyes as you take a deep breath and close your eyes and allow yourself to go all the way through. Slowly nice, close your eyes. Sink now, deeper, 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 sinking, floating, drifting down. I count to 3, and on the count of 3, you'll be back in the room feeling absolutely fantastic.
What's your name?
Fingers. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6.
Okay. What's that experience now? More slowly. More slowly.
It's like, sometimes you get up and you go somewhere to do something and it's as if you just forget the reason you're there. You don't know if you remember to forget or forget to remember. It's just as if it just slips from your mind, But it's good that I found you because now I know where it is and I can go. I can just go.
Bend that. When you try and bend it, I'm not too warm some of you. When you try and bend it, the strong one, try and bend that arm. It's a lot for me. Not. So language is a powerful thing. So why am I boring you with all this crap and whether you believe this is possible or not possible? Well, I think it is, and I encourage you to learn some of this and try it out for yourself. Basically, like everyone in security, what does this give us? Code injection. So if we know the language, we know how the mind works, if we know how the mind processes things, we can inject our code into the mind and get the results we're looking for. So how do we go about doing this? So we need to prioritize the information. So remember, it's 11 million pieces of information, only 16 to 40 go in, so we need to make sure that what we're suggesting is in that top part of the stack. So we bring awareness, we use keywords, we get people to imagine, we get people to think, we give people the cost. And the way the brain works is when you get someone imagining or just thinking about things, all the same emotions, all the same processes happen in your mind, even though you're not physically reacting on it. Build agreement. So have these yes frames. So get people playing your game by agreeing with everything you're saying. And as they're agreeing, then just pop your little suggestions in there. Make your reality what they're designing to happen. Another thing is a way of causing a passive interrupt. So like I said before, if you were to stop someone and challenge them on why they're in the building, what they're expecting is an explanation of why you're there. So we can create a pattern interrupt by just saying something completely rubbish. So if someone says, what are you doing in the building? And my wall at home is like 4 feet tall. Not like the wall that outside, that's like 14 feet tall. What happens is the person's like, yeah, oh. And that kind of creates this brain fart and this pattern interrupt, and that gives you like 1 to 5 seconds opportunity where that's where the critical factor suddenly falls over from it. It's like in a reboot mode. If you start suggesting things in that small gap, you've already started to break down the barrier and having them do what you want. I know this stuff sounds like, no way, and like I said before, I completely agree with you. Just try some of this stuff out and then still decide yes or no later on. As before we can anchor these states, so by touching people, in multiple ways, by saying things or giving certain actions, we can get people to repeat this stuff later on. And again, like I said before, don't think, be, use the right body language. So, the first thing, I'm going to try and inject a code. We need to have this planned path. We don't need just A, B, C, we need A, A1, A2, A3, B1, B3, all these things. Have this pretext, have this big because, have this reason why something's going to happen. Establish rapport, make friends with the security guard, have something in common. You know, did you see the game last night? Did you see this? Oh, my dog's been doing this. Just build up this rapport, this friendship, and people like to help each other. Establish agreement and get the buy-in, so get people to agree that you're there for a certain reason and it's valid. Be the dominant person. So you know, like when you see someone kicking up a shitstorm in a shop because they want a refund and you don't want to give it and they start getting arsey. Be like that, but in a more professional manner. Lead that dominance. And constantly monitor what's happening. So everyone's different. So you might be bitching at someone and that process just doesn't work. So you need to change your tack. That's why you've got these multiplicity options to get to B, not just A1 to B. So the second step. So we've got people agreeing, they believe why we're there, so now we start to get them playing our game. So we just start to use these pattern interrupts, start confusing people, talking about stupid things that don't make any sense. So research shows our brains can only handle like 5 to 7 loops at once. So if you start talking to people about, oh, the journey here was really terrible, and oh, my dog did this, and all these other things, then, that's right. Then all these things are happening, and basically people just get confused, and just utilize that communication and build upon it even more to get that buffer overflow where your brain's just going, and basically people just submit to what you want, because that's the easiest option. Our brain chooses the easiest way. So once we've got that far, now it's time to inject our code. So now, once we've got them playing our game, we start to tell them what we want and expect that to happen. So we change the focus from the negatives or what they're doubting into the positives that we want. We share the experience, we have that belief, and we communicate and command. We don't have to do this directly, we can be ambiguous about what we want. So using words that, you know, don't let me in now, but not sure if it's now or in a few minutes I need to get in. Just those sort of words. And basically, when you do this stuff, it's not going to always work. You're going to fail. And that is the key to being the master manipulator, is that when you press that button, and it just goes, because you're a master manipulator, you've got this out, and you can analyse why things didn't work, what suggestions you made, and how you can improve yourself next time. And the main thing is not to give up, just keep on trying and trying and trying. So some of you thinking, okay, that won't work for me, you can try and do this, it's not going to work for me. And that's one of the reasons why it does work, because everyone has this pre-built expectation that, oh, I'm not going to be fooled, you're not going to trick me. The reality is this works for everybody, because everyone's experienced hypnosis, everyone's being suggested every day. You were suggested to come here, and here you are. But like I said, everyone is different. So what works for one guy isn't going to work for a girl over here. So really need to change the process. One size doesn't fit everybody, we need to up our game. And that's the difference between this opportunist social engineer who just tries the same thing every time. If it doesn't work, they're out of luck. The master manipulator has a game plan, and they know that everything happens for a reason. So, the little exercise we did earlier, this is, if you chose N and it worked, then excellent. So, this is what you think you heard. So here's the word mind, M-I-N-D, If I was to ask you to extend your index finger and select any of the 4 letters, what would it be? Sounds straightforward. Now remember, our mind fills in gaps. So when we hear things that maybe not 100% right, the information that gets sent to our conscious mind is just what would be expected. So what you've actually heard, slightly different. So here's the word mind, M-I-N-D, a little bit more focus on the M there. If I was to ask you to extend your index finger, not index, select, so not and any, and N-Y instead. Basically what's happening here at the brain level is your subconscious mind is hearing N, passing information across your conscious mind which makes sense to it. But then when prompted to ask the question, which of these 4 letters, when your brain is asking itself that information, it says, oh, I've heard N a lot, that must be the free choice. So just as a simple example of how that is, that's really as complicated as it is. This stuff it's not rocket science, it just requires practice and lots of failure. So, lots of people say, this stuff is wrong. You shouldn't social engineer people. You shouldn't fuck with their mind, you shouldn't make people forget their name, all this sort of stuff. Well, you definitely shouldn't get the guy doing the washing up, that's just rude. But I don't think it's wrong. If you are a social engineer and you're doing it for the right reasons, I think it is ethical. So if you're doing it to educate people and share experiences and help them protect them, I don't think this is really so much an ethical problem. It's like anything, you can use a gun to kill someone, or you can use it as a protection for your family. All these techniques are the same thing, and we're using language every day. We're always manipulating people, we manipulate our kids. Right from the early age, you shouldn't lie, you shouldn't do this, and if you stick your tongue out too many times, it's going to stay out. All these things, it doesn't really happen. So what can you do to protect yourself? Mindfulness, that's the key. So thinking that you can't be suggested or something, that's part of the problem. So be aware of someone. If they're talking to you and you suddenly find yourself agreeing with everything, it's like, something could be up here. When someone comes up with just confusing, random answers to your questions, again, be mindful that something strange could be happening. This one, many levels, subtle touches. Someone's touching you in strange, ambiguous ways. You ever heard that? If someone is telling you stories that you can't quite sure why this is relevant and they keep on darting all over the place, this could be another example where someone's trying to suggest you at the end. And when someone is talking to you about not thinking about things, like I said before, your mind doesn't do negative. So just by having the command think about in the statement, this is happening. So everyone is susceptible to this, and if you think you're not, you're kidding yourself. So what can you do next? I encourage everyone to, if you've at least got an interest in this or just think it can't happen, educate yourself. So there's this slide, it's up on our website, and they pack it up now. And basically these are all the different authors of books and videos and training courses that I've studied. So if you want to start looking into any of this stuff, if you just do Google searches, you can find out who they are and what work they're all about. If you want to see me doing a couple of videos where people have agreed to let me film and just make people's name go and stuff, you can check this out on YouTube. And the main thing is practice. You need to practice this stuff. And one of the first things I found is, I think, oh, I can't do this stuff because I'm not confident. But really there's no such thing as confidence. Confidence is all about not having fear in something. The only way you can get that is by getting this process where you're not worried if it fails, because failure is a success as well, you're learning. And the other thing that's quite important to not having fear, brass balls. I mean, that really helps, because if you've got that, you can do anything. And the main thing also, when we're practicing, and because we're being ethical, you need permission. You need that get out of free slip so you don't end up in trouble or someone's boyfriend punching you or something because you made your girlfriend forget something. And like I said, I've said it a few times, but failure is to learn. Don't be worried about failing. If no one ever made mistakes, we wouldn't be where we were today. And yes, these things are difficult, but difficult isn't impossible. So I really encourage you to go out and try it. So thanks very much. Tell me what you're not thinking about right now. Any questions?
Any questions? Just It's always interesting, but do you have any sort of war stories you can find actually with stuff you've used in the field that has actually worked particularly well?
Yeah, I mean, my main sort of approach when using these techniques is identifying a target, so whatever the company is, and then when they, like in the UK, it's quite common, in Ireland, people go out for drinks afterwards, and utilising that social setting, and basically my sort of ruse is I'm a performer, so I've been hired by this place to do magic tricks, and hypnosis and that sort of thing, and basically approaching them, and either trying to use magic to confuse them or let them lower their barriers. So just a simple one of, I can read your mind. No, I can. So I want you to think of a number, like a 4-digit number that I definitely couldn't know. Something that's really secret, like your PIN number. I wouldn't know that, would I? No, you wouldn't know. So you get them there thinking about it, okay, try and send that number to me now, and you just tell them a random number. And of course they're like, ha, you can't read my mind. The number was 2187, or something. So that's just misdirection. Another one, using hypnosis. So if someone's happy for you to do hypnosis with them, do the usual stuff, stick in a hand, make someone forget their name. And that's the thing for me, the first time I made someone forget their name is, you can make someone forget something that they've known all their life, then surely you can do anything. So there's another routine that Anthony Chapman came up with that I've used a few times called Truth and Lies. So you set this routine where you tell someone they're the biggest liar in the world. Nothing, they can't say anything but lies. They love lying. You just ask them obvious questions. What size shoes you got? 25. How many kids you got? Oh, 82. How old are you? 5. And then you say, right, okay, now you're the biggest truth teller. You can't say anything but the truth. And you ask the same questions. What size shoe are you? Size 9. How many kids you got? None. How old are you? 35. What's your password? It just builds up this process where people just, the critical factor's just gone down, so all the information just seeps out. Other questions? Does that answer your question? Yeah.
You've talked about things that you do face to face, but have you tried or done some research on social forums or Facebook comes to mind or chat channels, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried crazy people. So you post these videos on YouTube, and you get emails saying, can you please hypnotize me via Skype? I'm a bit worried about those guys who are interested in other things and their men. These techniques, I've never tried it, but in theory would work with type, because obviously you're reading them, so the suggestion is there, but obviously there's no process of checking, there's no feedback. So like I say, because everyone's different, you might write something in a certain way that could work for someone, but you have no feedback to adjust your process. You can do this stuff over the phone, easy enough, because you can hear the feedback, but in person, to me, the way I do it is the easiest way. So I've got all these checks, can read the body language, see where someone's eyes are doing a certain thing. If I'm asking them to focus on the words I'm saying, I can tell that they're focused, not looking at a light or talking to their friend or watching some hot chick behind me or something. So for me personally, I think this stuff works best in person, but all this stuff is just language, just suggestibility. So any language in any form, there's no reason why it shouldn't work. I say if you believe it's going to work, just try it, see what happens. That's the only way you'll find out. Any more?
So maybe just as a tip, an ethical way to test out that stuff is when you phone your whatever regional service provider customer hotline and you want to get like service, and not only people telling you please restart the mobile and stuff.
Yeah.
You're less you have less possibility to do that, but all the guest talk or knowing what they're going to ask and then knowing how to answer that is.
I mean, all these things, like I said, these were specific studies I was doing to try and work out, some of these techniques, how they could help. Like I said, we do this all the time. When you ring up someone, you've been charged interest for some stupid amount, and you start telling people about, I had this happen to me. Can you imagine what that was like? And people start imagining, oh yeah, I got caught out, and all I had was my credit card, so I had to use it to get cash. And there's a sympathy thing, there's a rapport thing. It's when you start asking someone for, you could just have an exception. People are going to go along with what you're saying. Is it magic? I mean, that's just how we are. We want to help people. And that's why social engineering is there to explore the fact that we want to help. We're vulnerable.
So now we know how to attack, how to defend.
Yeah, so that's, I'm going to try to touch on that a little bit there. The main way to defend is to experience these things. Yeah? But even just from listening to this, even whether you believe it's possible or not possible, there's now part of your mind trying to analyse or think, oh, that didn't happen to me. And so I've had it before, there was a couple of weeks ago, I was in a bar, and as per usual, a friend says, Neil, I'll try and hypnotise the barman, ask me not to be hypnotised. So I don't try and trick people into it, so I say, I'm a hypnotist, can I try and hypnotise you? Yeah, I've always wanted to be hypnotised. And some of the language I was using, you can see he was trying to concentrate, but it didn't work. And after, he said, I used to study NLP. So when I was saying all these things, when I was talking about this, he said, all these little flags are going up, I'm imagining things and I'm focusing something. So just by having that knowledge, he wasn't susceptible to me doing that instance, because all these little triggers were firing off. Like his critical factor was, bells are ringing because you can't bypass me. Whereas someone else who doesn't have any of this knowledge, yes, I'm asking you to focus on something, yes, I'm asking you to listen. You don't really know why or what's happening. So that's why the barrier just falls down. So really education is the way, experiencing it as well. So either experiencing hypnotising someone or trying to suggest someone for being hypnotised, or even having gone to see a magic show, and all these things can kind of give you an answer as to why they work and what you do to protect yourself. And we really still don't know sort of why the brain does these things and how it works. But over the last year, a couple of universities in the States and the UK have started to study magicians and illusionists as to how they do what they do and why it tricks people. And through these studies, they're working out how the different senses work differently to how we really thought. So that we usually think that our eyes do one thing and the ears do another thing, but showing that the way magicians do things, how we can trick all the senses, is helping to understand a bit better how the brain works. And maybe we can be a bit better protected, but at the end of the day, this is how our brain works, this is how our culture is, how we're hooked up. So, like with everything with security, unless that whole culture change happens, people just aren't aware of it. People just dismiss it as, like I used to do.
We've already reached the lunch break.
Okay?
If anyone has any more questions to ask
All around
Leo,
it.
I'm pretty sure he's happy to answer them.
We're here till just after tomorrow lunchtime, so just grab me any questions or anything. Thanks very much.